I believe that I'm live. I'm just going to quickly check in to see if you see me looking at different cameras. It's because looking away from the camera, it's because I've got a couple of different streams at the moment. So I'll just intermittently connect with each one so that I'm connecting with each of you individually. And I'm just going to check as well to make sure where there are people commenting, that I'm able to see the comments, because I can't on the screens that I'm looking at the moment. So I'll be intermittently looking down to check to see. Thanks for watching, Sally. So great to have you here. We'll be starting in a moment. Okay, so I've got one that we can see comments. You're welcome to ask any questions throughout this masterclass, and I will get to them. If I haven't answered them throughout the masterclass, I will get to them at the end after I share everything with you. So you will not be forgotten. Okay, so I have got myself all set up. Thank you, thank you. Welcome to Intuitive You Masterclass. So you're wanting a greater connection and clarity and trust in your intuition. So this is the masterclass for you, and I am so grateful and honored to be able to share this masterclass with all of you. It is something that has been brewing for a long time, and it is a topic that I am very passionate about. I'll go through with you a couple of the things that will be happening during this 2 hours, and then we'll get right into it. So we will be having a meditation shortly, and then I'll be sharing a little bit with you about my journey and what has led me to teaching about intuition. And then I will go straight into what is your intuition, and I will go in very deeply with you about what is your intuition. You're welcome to ask any questions that you have. What is your, how do you connect to this and tune in with your intuition? And then how do you grow your connection to your intuition? I'll probably pop in a few things there as well around like what does that do for you in your life? Like, how does that benefit you in your life, being able to grow your intuition? And then I also do have, for some of those that are viewing as well, I'll probably be wrapping it up there for some of you, but there are a couple of you who I will also be continuing on and sharing a little bit more about some other things that I have going on that you might be interested in as well, that goes in even greater depth. So I will tune in and start this meditation. If you are not somewhere that you are comfortable, please make sure that you go somewhere where you're comfortable, where you would not be disturbed, and where it is quiet. This is just primarily a drop-in meditation. So make sure that you're feeling like you won't be disturbed and you're able to really tune in and drop in. Make sure if you're driving that this is something that you possibly listen to the replay to do later, or if you're in the middle of doing something that would be dangerous if you began to do a meditation, or if you closed your eyes. Something that I did want to share a little bit as well before I jump into the meditation is I wanted to really give thanks to the lands and to the earth in the 4 directions, and I wanted to give thanks to our guides and our higher self and the stewards of the lands and our ancestors as well. And that's something that I feel is very important to really bring in thanks and really honor all that has come together for us to be here, and also thank and honor all of you for being here with us today. So at the beginning of this meditation, I will start with the bowl, and then when you hear it again, that means that the meditation is over and you can take some time to come back into the space and come back into your body. So when you are ready, taking 3 deep breaths in and out with a So just connecting in with your body and your breath. If it is more comfortable for you to close your eyes, please close your eyes or lay down. As we breathe slowly, we are relaxing with each breath. We are connecting to our heart. We are letting go of anything that happened up until now. We are connecting to our breath. Relaxing deeply more and more with each breath. Becoming present. Connecting to our bodies and our hearts. Now we tune in further to our heart, feeling warm and loved, feeling safe. Connecting to our bodies, just being present of what comes up without attachment. Feeling trust, more and more surrendered. Feeling open to receive, open to learn, open to listen, and ready for what we are about to experience. As we tune in, ask yourself, what might be a wonderful intention for you to hold for this masterclass? What is the greatest thing you would like to receive and experience through this next 2 hours? And just breathe and allow the answer to come to you. So just tuning in and asking yourself the question, what would you like to get out of this masterclass? What would you like to know more about your intuition? Breathing, connecting, allowing, feeling safe and ready, feeling present taking the time that you need to come back to your body when you're ready. And if you feel you desire to write down what your intention is for the next 2 hours, or if you would like to go grab a pen and paper if you don't have one, in case you would like to take notes over the next 2 hours, I'll just wait a moment. Please feel free to comment how you're feeling, maybe potentially even comment your intention down below. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the remainder of this masterclass, and I will get to them as soon as I can. So thank you all for joining. For those who may have just joined, I will just let you know as well. Make sure that you also comment that you can hear me. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me okay. I'm actually streaming on a couple of different devices into a couple of different containers. So please let me know if you can't hear me very well. That would be appreciated. And thank you for being here.
Recording in progress.
Please let me know if you can't hear me very well. There we go. Just opening up to make sure I can see. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Gemma. I can see your comment there. Perfect. Thank you, Tori. Thank you. Okay. So we will begin. Make sure you have water if you like to have water. I am very excited to be sharing this masterclass with all of you, and I will share a little bit about myself. So I didn't say at the beginning, but most of you who have entered this will have seen somewhere I am Destiny Faye, and a little bit about me. So right now I currently live in the Sunshine Coast in Australia, and I live here in a beautiful house with my 16-month-old toddler and my beloved partner. And I am very grateful and blessed for the life that I feel I currently live. It's definitely with thanks to some of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Being able to live in a beautiful home, being able to live close to beaches and mountains, it's something that I have desired and dreamed about. Being able to do what it is that I love every day, and being able to share so many things that I'm passionate about, and teach and support others in their lives to live their dream lives, and to be able to live a more soulful and purpose-filled life, and to have greater clarity in their life of what they feel that they're here to do. So that's me right now. And there's been, obviously we all have our journeys, and I'm going to give you the best summarization that I can, because there is so many things that have happened in my journey. Please feel free to ask any questions as well below. I'm just gonna move these ones down. There we go. So I'll go starting from my childhood just briefly, because for me, I consider myself to be a very empathic and intuitive child. I do believe that most children are actually quite empathic and intuitive, but this lasted for quite some time into my teen years for me. And I had experiences where I would accidentally read people's minds. So I feel like I was quite tuned in. I had very interesting experiences in my dreams, and would go on what's called astral journeys. And that was just very normal for me. And for a long time, I felt like that was what everybody experienced. As when we're children, we often just believe that what we're experiencing must be the same for everybody, or at least very much the same. So as I got older, I realized that there was different things that I was tuning into and doing that wasn't necessarily the same experience that all other children were having, or the same experience that adults were having that I had around me. You know, many other adults would have had these experiences, but I didn't have adults that understood what I was experiencing in my life. So I felt very misunderstood as a child, but I was quite intuitive and very sensitive. And so as I was growing up, especially into my teen years, I experienced a lot of resistance from other people, and a lot of rejection from people. and kind of felt often like an outcast, especially in my family. I'm one of 6. I was in a big family, and my mum had left my dad when I was young, and it was quite a challenge for her being a single parent of 6 kids. So there was quite a lot of chaos in my home, and I felt like I was very susceptible to that. So I began, I feel, being curious about many things and perceiving things, I guess, differently to other people perceive things in the world from, when I was very little. And this was to some degree wonderful, as I believe that they were gifts, but at the same time, in my environment that I was growing up in, it just wasn't really something I knew how to consistently maneuver, because I didn't have anybody around me to guide me or encourage me or to explain to me these gifts and experiences that I had, and that everybody has the capacity to experience these things, but that doesn't mean everybody necessarily is experiencing these things. So it took me quite a while, and I was struggling throughout high school. I ended up dropping out of high school, and not long after dropping out of high school, or right before, I ended up experiencing severe anxiety. And I also had been diagnosed previous to that with depression and was struggling a lot with conformity, essentially. I felt like I didn't understand the way that the world was, and I felt like I understood different things, but I didn't understand why the world was, at least the world I was experiencing, pressing conformity when I felt we were naturally all unique. And I felt like, why would it be wise to make us all seem the same when it's so wonderful that we're all unique? And there was just different feelings and wisdoms that I feel I kind of saw and felt, being very empathic and very intuitive, that not a lot of people saw things that way or understood. So I had a lot of pressure around me to conform. Hi, thank you for commenting, and thank you for joining, Amber. So I'm just at the moment giving a recap about myself and my journey. So when I became a teenager, there came a point where I actually shut all my emotions off, as I was experiencing intense anxiety, and I was experiencing what I was diagnosed with as depression. And I didn't really have like a mentor or anybody who was able to actually help nurture my gifts and help me understand the gifts that I had. And I just felt very overwhelmed and very judged and very out of place in most places that I was. So after dropping out of high school, there was some really challenging times, and I, for the second time in my life, nearly left the earth, and something stopped me. But after that time, I had shut off my emotions because I felt very overwhelmed by my emotions and didn't know how to function throughout all these intense emotions I was feeling and empathically feeling from other people, especially in a chaotic household of 6 kids and my mum. And my mum also had struggled throughout her life with depression. So there was that. There was a lot of suppressed emotions, a lot of suppressed feelings. And I feel like I was just feeling the majority of that. So I switched off, I think at about the age of 17, I switched off my emotions. And I did for about 5 years. And through the process, I essentially switched off my connection to my intuition, my connection to my higher self, you could say, my soul, my internal wisdom, I would call it. And I began making decisions based around what everybody else thought I should do. And I became, quote unquote, the model citizen, just doing, following what everybody else did, what everybody else said. Left school, so I got a 9-to-5, working full time, and essentially for the next 5 years, somewhat lost myself. I ended up moving out of home, in with a boyfriend at the time. That, reflecting back, there was quite a lot of abuse, not physical, but emotional and verbal abuse, which doesn't surprise me because there was a lot of that in my childhood. So fast forward after about 5 years, from that point, I was about 23 or 24, I think, and I ended up having like some feelings come back and some thoughts come back and asking questions to myself. And throughout this process of asking questions, like tuning in and being like, I'm miserable. Like, why have I never realized that I'm miserable? Like, why am I miserable? I remember writing a letter to myself being like, is there something wrong with me? Everybody else seems to be happy with, you know, having a full-time job and a nice car and living in a nice house. Me and my partner had recently moved into a near new 4-bedroom house. We didn't buy it, but we were planning to buy. We were talking about having children. He was 6 years older than me, or 5 years older than me. So he was probably at that age where most men tend to have kids if they're going to. He felt pressure, didn't really feel like he was ready to have children. And I didn't really feel like I was ready either. But we were kind of still in that following what everybody else does. And people were continually asking us, when are you getting married? You know, when are you having kids? And it was quite a lot of pressure. Yeah, coasting, definitely, Lucille, thank you. Yeah, it was, I'm sure a lot of us have experienced this. It's probably very common for a lot of us when we start asking questions and start waking up, that, you know, we reflect and we're like, well, you know, where weren't we living from our soul and from our desires? So after I entered the relationship, after my feelings started coming up, I realized that, you know, I deeply loved this person, but if I was to really live the life I desired and really connect to what I wanted to do in my life, he probably wouldn't fit. Like, and he may not even be the person that I'd want to be with. Like, he was my first serious adult partner or boyfriend. I was, I think, 19 when we met. So I was still quite young when we met. And it was my first adult relationship. So I didn't know anything else. I moved out of home into his place. So I kind of made a decision at one point when there was complications and challenges in our relationship, and I had just quit a full-time job because I started becoming unwell. I started having health issues. So I kind of, to some degree, began to gradually like clear. And through that clearing process, I left my partner. I moved back home, which was something that was very hard on my pride, especially going back to living with some of my siblings who are now teenagers, and not quite, you know, supportive, inspiring to be around, was actually quite negative and quite somewhat abusive after living almost alone, except for when my partner was home, because he actually traveled a lot for work. It was very challenging being in a share house, and I was the only person in the house working when I got a job when I moved back home. So everybody else just did whatever they wanted and wanted to do whatever they wanted and didn't care about what anybody else wanted, at least from my perspective. So it was very hard. So people would jump in the shower and I would be like, look, I have to get ready for work. And they would be like, I don't care. And I would need to do a load of laundry so that I had clothes for work the next day, and they weren't working. And they were just like, well, I don't care. You know, that's your problem. You know, it's like, it'd be like, it's your fault that you're here and you broke up with your partner and you left your job, sort of thing. So it was just very challenging. And those challenges for me kind of catalyzed me going deeper inwards and catalyzed me working on myself, I guess, and getting more connected to personal development and reconnecting to things that I used when I was much younger, when I had lived at home, like, for example, journaling. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but there was tools and things that I used when I was younger to cope before I switched off my emotions, or I just kind of disconnected from my emotions and my intuition. And then after that, I'll kind of take a leap. So I ended up not long after that moving into a place on my own. I was working 2 jobs, sometimes working, 12, 13-hour days. So I could get out on my own and see what it was like. And really, actually, when I wasn't working, I was looking into astrology and I was just curious. I wanted to know who I was. I spent so long being who everybody else thought I should be. I didn't really know who I was. And I then kind of became a hermit because I realized that all the people that I had around me kind of had projected onto me who they wanted me to be. And I, for a period of time, could connect to them from that person while they were happy because I was being that person. And then when I started realizing that wasn't who I was, I didn't know how to be around those people and feel like they would accept me being myself, because it was very different. It wasn't necessarily the status quo, and they desired to abide by the status quo. So After that, I worked for a couple of years and I ended up changing jobs drastically. I studied makeup and wanted to get into creative things since I was a child. I'd had a dream to become a makeup artist. I started my own business as a makeup artist and I became a manager at a cosmetic company very quickly. So I rapidly was, transforming my life. And again, it was kind of on the outside, but there was this deep part of me that was hurting from different things in my childhood. And I began to work on the healing of that. So moving forward, after those couple of years, I came to another pinnacle point in my life where I actually took another huge leap. And I guess I went even deeper into the journey, the intuitive journey, the internal journey, and getting to know myself and getting to understand myself as a soul and so on. So what had happened leading up to that as a catalyst was my mum had been sick with cancer and hadn't really been doing much to fulfill her desires and her dreams. She just essentially had been a mum most of her life and had sacrificed so much to take care of and raise 6 children and didn't really think about what she desired. And through the process of her getting sick and then within a year actually passing away and being able to connect with my mum and ask my mum questions, it just really brought up for me, like, am I living the life that I wanted to when I was a child? Am I living the life that I want to live? And life is too short. And that was kind of like that real catalyst. I just got a tattoo not long before my mum had passed away with the phrase Carpe Diem on my arm as a reminder to seize the day, and started gradually leaning more and more into my intuition. Previous to this, I'd started getting into yoga and meditation. Thank you, Lucille, for letting me know that. And also, Ghislaine. Yeah, so thank you for being here on my live. So make sure you ask any questions that you have as well. There will be some more information very shortly about intuition. So I had, leading up to my mum passing away, I had been undergoing for like 6 months to a year daily practices of meditation and yoga. And really part of that was actually to manage anxiety that had arisen for me and just this massive pressure of, living on my own, paying all the bills on my own. I had a car that I was paying off that had been agreed upon that my previous partner would help me pay it off when we were together, and none of that had happened. And then I still had this big debt when we had split. And I ended up getting a motorbike. I ended up selling my car and getting my motorbike license. I ended up just doing all of these different things throughout that year to get to know myself and get to, push the edges to see what life could be for me. And then when my mum passed away, leading up to that, I'd had this vision of traveling. I'd only been overseas once in my life. When I was younger, I wanted to travel the world. I had such a passion for travel. I even at times as a child ran away from home and wanted to just be like a nomad and just follow wherever life took me with kind of this trust. I just had this innate trust as a child. And over the years, I'd forgotten that when I disconnected from my emotions. So I had set out this intention that I would travel, and part of where I wanted to go was to see Italy. I thought I would go on a cruise, and I thought that I would have all this savings money to do this. So I was at my job. I was anticipating for my birthday the following year, I think this was September, the following year in February, to go on a cruise to Italy and maybe see a couple of other places in Europe, because I really felt called to Europe. I loved the culture. I also I was studying Italian and had an Italian tutor. I kind of was wanting to do my own Eat, Pray, Love, if you're familiar with that book, because that was kind of what I was feeling. I needed to rediscover myself and rediscover living life. So that was my intention. And what had happened was I had ended up putting all these places that I desired to visit that were extra places to that over time on my vision board, and I ended up manifesting pretty much all of them, and that's something that I'll go into later. I actually do a lot of teaching around conscious manifestation and the tools in which can be used. So I put all these things up on my wall, and I actually ended up quitting my job. So I had enough money to cover my rent. I was renting at a friend's place. Fortunately, I was this beautiful apartment near the city where I lived. I'd previously been working in the city, so it was perfect. And then something had happened at work. I felt there was this push, this continual push to leave. I felt like I had reached my growth capacity there. I was doing my makeup business on the side. I was told that I wasn't going to progress in the company for another 2 years at least. And previous to that, I was actually getting promoted every 3 months. And I was learning and growing and being taught a training course through this company. I was going to networking events. I was reading all the books I could on personal development and on business. And I was wanting to continue growing, and I felt really held back. Thanks for watching, Catherine. So let me know as well how this is landing for you. I'm nearly finished my story, but I'm also curious what you can kind of relate to in this story. And if this is anything that you have experienced or similar, like insights or moments that you've experienced too. So what ended up happening was, after I quit my job, I had all these things on my vision board, and people and opportunities showed up to achieve that. Before I had the money to pay for my flights to go overseas, I went and spoke to a travel agent, and I got all the costings and I got a quote, and I didn't have the money, but I just would meditate every day. I was doing cleanses. I was spending time on my own. I was connecting to online meditations and online activation groups on a regular basis. I was reading. I had a great morning routine, and I was really just like living. I started using oracle cards. I started had healing sessions done, past life regressions done, synchronicities were rolling into my life. And I was just present each moment at that time in my life. There wasn't anyone else that was really influencing me that I didn't want to. I would listen to audio books about business and spirituality and personal development, and I would read books, and I would learn about crystals, and I would learn about all these different things. And would look at every morning and every night, I would look at my vision board. And my vision board essentially was just these countries that I wanted to go to. At the time, I was also running on the side this little campaign called Free Hugs for Awareness. And it was something that came through in a meditation. And I'm not going to go into that story. That was a wonderful experience. And I actually had an event with a bunch of volunteers, and we all went out and gave free hugs to people. And it was in the name of raising awareness for mental health and suicide. And I met someone through that while I had been invited to a protest the day before my event. And this person that I met at that protest event, still to this day, is one of my greatest friends, and actually recently came and stayed here with his 3-year-old daughter recently when I had my birthday. So him showing up in my journey was this pinnacle point, and all these different people kept showing up, and he actually ended up lending me, without an attachment to it ever being paid back, money to cover all my flights to go on this journey. And I was selling my things. I had a motorbike. I actually sold my motorbike the day before I left, so the only cash that I took with me overseas. So I essentially had a lot of my accommodation, and most of my flights were all booked except for maybe 1 or 2 to go to 9 different countries over a period of 8 weeks. And it happened very quickly. I moved out of my friend's place that had rent paid up until a certain date. Fortunately, I was able to actually temporarily stay in my mum's house, which she had passed away, but 2 of my sisters were living there. And I went there for a couple of days and got taken to the airport, and I became a nomad. It was actually, I was traveling for 4 years. I wasn't traveling overseas all the time. I hitchhiked across Australia, and I didn't know how long I would be a nomad for or not. I just trusted my intuition. And then how to tie this all together. So the experiences that I learned throughout my nomadic journey, one of the biggest things was each moment, because I didn't have anything else influencing me unless I chose to give my energy to something I wanted to learn from somebody else, like a TED Talk or a person who I met that I felt I wanted to learn something about. I was essentially tuning into my intuition and wanted to do that. I was actually looking for books, how to connect my intuition, how to refine my intuition, practicing tools and all sorts of things. So to tie this all together, it kind of came back to me reconnecting to who I was when I was a child, me healing wounds that I had when I was a child, and me really activating my connection to my natural gifts of psychic abilities and intuition. So this was something that was really, it was so incredible. There were so many challenges that I had to face, including, which was part of my intention at the time, I relinquished almost all of my physical possessions. My goal was, at one point, I was wondering if I was going to become a monk. I was possibly going to become Buddhist. I read a lot of things about Buddhism. I just wanted peace and I wanted spiritual enlightenment. And I sought out on my journeys and my experiences ways in which I could learn from mentors and experiences that would actually grow me. Didn't really care about physical possessions or identity or any of that at the time. But throughout the journey, I studied energy work, I studied coaching and neurolinguistic programming, and I started actually my business online in a different container to my makeup throughout the journey after I had actually become a nomad. So I actually grew my business and grew a following and grew my online brand and identity while I was manifesting my way around. Because for me, I wasn't working and saving money and traveling. And I know that's not usually the way that people do it for safety and security, but part of my journey was unique in the process that I was supposed to learn to create the safety and security within myself and learn how to connect to my intuition in every moment and listen to my guidance. So that's just a little bit about me and the journey and how I've come to the point of being here with you all today to share about intuition. And this is something that I'm deeply passionate about sharing because it's been such a powerful thing for me in my life and has really helped me, I feel, to transform myself and to be able to help to magnetize and make choices from a place that create the life of my dreams. So this is why I'm so passionate. And recently I, through a mentorship, was asked to go to 5 people that I love and to ask them how I gave value to their life and what they thought my greatest qualities were. And most of those 5 people actually said that my greatest quality was trust in the universe and my connection to my intuition and trusting my intuition. So that's nice to get that reflection from other people as well. And I'm so grateful to have all of you here. So we're going to get into it now. So make sure you have a pen and paper if you want to take notes. And make sure that you ask any questions. Thank you all for commenting and letting me all know that you're here. And I will start getting into intuition. So there's no extra questions that I can see there. So here we go. So what is your intuition? So there's a lot of ways that you could explain your intuition, and I'm going to go into some of them, and then I'm actually going to see if something wants to channel through me around this. I do quite a lot of channeling in what I do with a strong connection to my intuition, and I do also access a group of Pleiadian beings from a different star system that I channel frequently, as well as connecting to and channeling different beings. So for me, the things that came to me when I was learning about my intuition and understanding my intuition was that, in the easiest way to explain, it's this inner voice. This inner voice. And often to most people, when they think that they don't hear their intuition or they don't have intuition, it's very quiet, especially if it hasn't been listened to. Or there are physical or energetic things blocking the connection to it. Hey, Carla, thanks for joining. So your inner voice. And it's also that conscience. So often we hear about our conscience and that like good angel on the shoulder rather than the bad angel on the shoulder, or the devil on the shoulder. So for me, I feel like your intuition is, or your conscience is a part of your intuition. And I feel like it's your soul and your higher self, or you could say your higher self, and sometimes even your guides, communicating to you what you knew before you were born and what you selected for yourself in this journey, and connecting you to a greater vantage point, a higher view and perspective of what you're experiencing and what is going on in your human viewpoint and perspective, in your lens, through your personality, through your current body and identity, through beliefs and, you know, your ego personality. And it's important as a human being to have this single perspective that we have. But if we're connecting to this inner voice that's guiding us, I feel like when it comes to choices, for me, I always go to my intuition first, and then I go to logic and reason. And for a lot of my life, I was I'm very good at logic and reason. Logic and reason came very easily to me, and for a large portion of my life, or maybe not a large portion, but for a portion of my life, essentially what I lived off and decided off was reflecting on things, strategy, logic, and making sure that I made the best decision, and, you know, gathering a lot of information and weighing up all the options. And that was something that was very easy for me and came naturally for me. And that's great. And that's a great tool that I also use. But I feel like my intuition kind of cuts through all of that. And it's much more direct, simple, and wise when it comes to making a decision, or it comes to something I may not see through this vehicle. And if I'm only going on what I can physically see and what I can physically learn and what I can physically get information and strategy with, and I'm very much logically in my head and stuck in my brain, and I'm not connected to my body, and I'm not connected to my heart or any of my intuition, then it makes it very hard for me to access this higher perspective of what's going to potentially happen and what has happened in the past, and how this can all be tied together in a really simple and direct way that kind of cuts through all of the noise of beliefs and of noise outside, people saying things to us and things that we need to do, and distractions that we have going on in our immediate reality. So for me, the intuition is essentially this wise inner voice that can see from a greater perspective what is possible for us and what is a path for us that I feel we had chosen for ourselves before we were born, or we decided to choose before we were born, and where we essentially had amnesia and didn't remember anything up until the point that we were born, anything before we were born. So that's something that I thought was really interesting when I started learning about intuition, and also that is a component of your gut. Like, I feel like your intuition can be connected to like that gut feeling, but in and of itself, I don't feel like that gut feeling is intuition on its own. Often your gut feeling about something is an instinct, and that instinct is often a primal thing. So that's often what you have coming through from your ancestors. It's something that comes through the body. It's something that it's that deep wisdom within your genetics and your body of perception of different things, of memories, of different experience, and then also ancestral experiences too that comes through as, oh, that doesn't feel right. And this has been well researched and documented in animals, and how animals respond from their gut instincts. And I feel like that is actually a portion of the intuition, but I feel like to me the intuition is different, and the intuition is more that internal voice, or that internal, maybe not even just the feeling, especially if that feeling is just in your gut. And I feel like it's just the gut instinct is just a portion. For a very long time, I thought that they were one and the same, or that they were definitely connected in some way. But I feel like the intuition is much higher, and I don't feel like your gut instinct is necessarily that, like being able to see from a bird's eye view, past, present, future, being able to give you that great wisdom of what's going to lead you to what you desire, what's going to lead you to the greatest expression and the greatest experience that you came here to experience. So to me, that's what intuition is. If you have any more questions or you want me to share more, please comment them below. And I'm just going to tune in and see if there's anything else that wants to come through in regards to intuition. That's very interesting, Tori, too, because, and I would love to speak on that. If you have anxiety, you probably shouldn't trust your gut. So in the moment, potentially not. But sometimes if you're very sensitive, if you experience anxiety and you honor, well, this is my perspective anyway, from someone who had very intense anxiety for a long time. I feel like if you have anxiety, there is a part of you that feels like something is dangerous. And the most loving thing to do in order to access then your intuition, if it's got to do with making a decision, is to take yourself to a situation that you can calm, because anxiety affects the nervous system. And if the nervous system is being essentially overrun with fear and adrenaline, because that's what happens on a physiological level, then it's very hard for you to be able to listen clearly to what your intuition may be guiding you to, because your whole system or your physical system is being overrun with you need to change something to take care of yourself kind of response. That's somewhat very much connected to almost a gut instinct. When I had anxiety when I was growing up, I later found out for me that one of the reasons why I experienced anxiety was, one, to do with my empathy. And part of the empathy, or the reason that I had such a strong empathy for others and an ability to feel and sense other people's emotions, as well as sometimes even feel and be able to interpret other people's thoughts as their thoughts are actually not just in their head, their thoughts are part of their mental body and can be outside their body. So I was picking up on that. And because of that, I was constantly, if I was around other people, and as a child, I lived with a whole house of people who had all their thoughts and their energy and suppression and things going on. So when we're around other people and we experience anxiety sometimes, you know, there is that perspective of threat, and we need to come to a safe space. So I also, in the past, in the recent past, experienced social anxiety. And part of that can be a perception of safety, or physically something that isn't safe. And that's kind of guiding us towards, I guess, where there's healing or where we can further love ourselves. And that in itself, I guess you could say, if someone was experiencing that, it's almost a prelude to what their intuition would want. I feel like if you're in an environment and you experience anxiety, it's probably most loving to take yourself to where you can feel the most safe, connect to the body. I have heard a quote that says, if you're anxious, you're probably stuck thinking about the future and trying to live in the future and worrying about the future. And also, if you're in an unsafe environment and your nervous system is feeling overwhelmed, anxiety will ensue. Wow. I think that that's also very common. I have experienced anxiety from time to time, not as severe as what I have when I was younger. And in my childhood, something that I was able to, since this is what's coming about in this space, is being able to connect to the body and being able to help break away from being stuck in the head, because often when we're in anxious states, there's stories and thoughts that are happening and we get stuck on this roller coaster of fearful thoughts that then respond and create cortisol in the body and have our nervous systems feel kind of frazzled And when we're able to connect to the body and connect to the breath, it's almost connecting to more of ourselves rather than just our mental body. And something that I can also share with you just briefly here, because this has come up, is a tool that I recently learned that's really beneficial for me, that's actually within my morning ritual. It's best to do with other people, but you can do it on your own. It's hopefully you guys are okay to learn about this too, since the topic of anxiety has come up. Is if you, with the tip of your hands, do light touches from the top of your head to the tips of your fingers. And me and my partner do this together. We do it to each other 3 times, and we just gently touch. And it's something that a massage therapist taught me, Zentai Shiatsu, a massage therapist taught me when I was experiencing postpartum anxiety, because after my baby was born, I had some trauma, and there was quite a lot of intense anxiety that I experienced for the first 6 months of his life. So that was something that I started using. Another thing that I was able to use to calm my nervous system, because anxiety is very connected to the nervous system, is things like smelling lavender oil, grounding, putting my feet in nature. Something else that I used a lot when I was younger as well, that was a great tool for me to cope when I had very intense anxiety. And when I was a child, I had anxiety very badly for 2 months. I would have up to 3 panic attacks a day, and I dropped 3 dress sizes in a couple of months because I felt so anxious that I couldn't eat. And it wasn't from lack of trying. I tried to eat and I felt sick if I ate too much because I had butterflies in my stomach constantly. And one of the things that I learned to do through that process was really connecting back to myself and imagining a safe space, and also bringing my energy field in was something that I later started to do. So now, as somebody that has worked with people through psychic work and been able to connect to somebody else's energetic field, and what that energetic field is communicating to me, but is also communicating to them if they're tuning into that with their intuition, is I am in my own little bubble, and that if I consciously choose to connect with somebody else's energetic field in a strong way, I will open myself to that specific person with permission. Whereas previously to doing this, I felt like my energy field was so big and so expansive, as a lot of us is, and I feel like this can create more anxiety, that we're picking up anything, because our energy field can be so wide, and we can bring it in and expand it out and connect to so much. I'm just going to have to quickly plug in my phone because the battery is low. I've got a couple of different things going on. Let me see if this works. There we go. Perfect. Hopefully that stays. So I hope that helps. Let me know if that helps. And if you have any other questions, best way to remember about where in your past lives. Carla, best way to remember who about in your own past. Okay, so past lives, I'm only going to touch on this very briefly since the question was asked, but the way that I started learning about my past lives was through connecting to my intuition, because I started feeling like I know someone and I just met them. And I was like, but I feel like I know you, and I've never met them. And from that point, I was like, occasionally I felt like I had like downloads, or I had drop-ins of information about people I was meeting. And sometimes I would get visions of a life with that person. There was one person. So as you grow your intuition, you can tune into your Akashic records, the energy flow. You can tune into your energy field and your soul, your greater soul, and it actually has, you know, these memories and these blueprints within the connection of your soul. And you can also get past life regression if you don't feel like that's something that you're able to. My pleasure, Tori. Thank you. That's something that you don't feel like you're able to do yet, and you're really curious about your past lives. There's a couple of things that you could do, like, for example, you could get a past life oracle deck. That was something that I used for a while that I really loved. And when I first started doing readings for other people, I would regularly use if people wanted to learn about their past life. And it wasn't full-blown details. It was information about where they might have been, what they might have done. And then that experience can bring, oh yeah, that resonates. And then they can like get some feelings come through because they're connecting to that part of their soul. And the question is that the asking of the questions is so important, because when we're asking questions and we want these answers, we're really able to be open and be humble to learning. And then that information can come in and we can listen if it's coming through quietly, or if it's coming through in different ways from, say, our guides, our higher self, and our soul. So past life regression is another way. You can also find guided past life regression meditations online, I'm pretty sure. I haven't used them before. Or you can get a script and you can record the script with your voice and then play the script while you're laying down, relaxing, doing a meditation. And in a past life regression, if you've never had one, it essentially is a guided meditation. And usually you, like for me, when I had mine, the lady that did mine gave me a big massage beforehand. She did a reading for me beforehand, which I wasn't expecting because that was my first experience of oracle or tarot cards, coming from a Catholic background. So that's where a lot of, you know, my suppression and a lot of my pressure to not be intuitive or anything like that came from. Growing up with a very strict Catholic father, very, very strict. And having to go to church every Sunday, and just all of the views from that. That's awesome. Thank you, Alison. So in the past life regression, it's essentially like a guided meditation. I actually have a certification in timeline therapy, and that's something that people can go into their past lives. It's not just for past lives, it's for healing different points in your timeline, which exceeds this lifetime, and using hypnotherapy. So a person who does a past life regression usually would use hypnotic phrases and guide you into a hypnagogic state where you can get into almost a transcendental state, and you can be open to visions and intuition coming through, and they connect you to that part of your soul or that part of your Akashic records through guidance for you to get information. And they ask you questions and you answer what comes through. And when I first experienced it, I was quite in my head. I was quite skeptical. I went because I was really excited and curious, but I still had all of this skepticism coming through me. And it's interesting what I do now, because I was what I would think of one of the most skeptical people. Curious, but very skeptical and very logical and very practical. And there was a long time when I didn't trust my intuition. And then when I did and I didn't, and I realized the amazing things that occurred when I did trust my intuition, and that things didn't turn out as great when I didn't trust my intuition, I started trusting it more. And I had like initiations and lessons from my soul and the universe and my guides on, you know, to trust my intuition and what is possible if I trust my intuition. So I'm going to move on now. We have an hour. So I'm going to move on now to your how to connect. So the next stage of this is, how do we connect and tune into our intuition? Just before I do, I just want to touch base to see that you all of those that are on are feeling fulfilled in what I've shared about what your intuition is, or if you still feel like you have some questions, please comment them and I can get back to those. But I feel it's really important to continue to move on with the next phase. Thank you for those who are watching live, and you can also comment replay below if you were not able to be on the live. So for me, I was very curious, and my intuition coming through was very subtle, very subtle. I felt like I couldn't hear my intuition. Oh, interesting, Lucille. Something's going on in the matrix. Thanks for watching, Melinda. So we're about to start talking about how to connect to your intuition. If anyone missed the first half, feel free to be able to watch the beginning of the replay again if you're coming on live and we're part of the way through. So when I first started connecting to my intuition, I only could hear it when I was quiet and I was connected. If I was stuck in my head and I was busy, as I often was, which is one of the reasons why I actually started doing meditation. This is something I'll talk more on in this section. My pleasure, Tori. Thank you for joining. So I had a very busy mind. I had a very busy life and a lot of pressure that I allowed in my life to come from externally. And you could say at that time in my life, I was quote unquote a people pleaser. I felt like I got my value from other people liking me and being happy, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate. And I also was very big on giving. This is a natural part of my personality, which is not necessarily a bad thing in itself, but I would naturally overgive. And I wouldn't feel like I was valuable enough to receive or I was worthy of love unless I'd given enough. I'd done enough, I'd given enough. And I was a perfectionist, quote unquote, a perfectionist. So it took an awful lot for me to actually feel ready to receive. When it comes to your intuition, if it's talking to you, you need to be in a space of receptivity. Just like when we communicate. If we're not in a space of receptivity and someone's talking, we're not going to hear or listen to anything that they have to say. This has been a big journey for me because communication is something that's very important to me, and I'm very passionate about receptive communication and just learning and growing my communication ability, because I feel like it's very powerful. And when we don't have those tools, as a lot of us didn't really learn very supportive communication skills as we were children, it can cause a lot of challenges and conflict in relationships, and also challenges and conflicts with ourselves is something that I learned. So when I started meditating, initially it was for 9 minutes and I did it every day. And it was a visualization that I did. There's very many forms. I was curious, so I started exploring all the different forms of meditation. And to me, meditation means in itself where you're choosing to continually focus. I will talk on that in a minute for you, Carla, because that's something that will be very connected to this as well. So thank you for your comment. So I would visualize a peaceful space. So it's almost like my sanctuary, so I could feel safety, because I feel like it can be challenging for us to become receptive and to stop being in thoughts, actions, movements, doing, which is synonymous with masculine energy, the masculine energy, and can burn us out if we're just in the masculine energy. If we're just giving and we're never receiving, it can create resentment and it creates imbalance in us. So when I first started doing this meditation, I actually found it quite challenging, but I really wanted to change. I was very lonely. I was depressed here and there. I had anxiety here and there, but I was going to work and I was very busy and I was learning and growing and, you know, very busy and becoming more and more happy just being on my own and not needing other people. But there was still this level of loneliness because I didn't really have that much intimacy in my life or connection. And I was beginning to grow this connection with myself. And I wasn't very receptive either. So what I was beginning to do when I meditated was I was learning to focus, and that's essentially what meditation in itself helps with, as well as ability to relax, and that helping everything in itself when we can relax more. And I just visualize a safe space, and that was my anchor. In meditation, you often have an anchor. It can be your breath. I started with my breath, and then I visualized this space. And for me, it was just this safe space, what I perceived as safe. Was in nature. And I'd set a 9-minute timer, and my main goal was just as many times as possible focus on breathing and seeing that space, because for the first few weeks hardly any of that 9 minutes was actually not getting taken away in thought. And that's what a lot of people often experience if they do that form of meditation, because there's many forms. This, I believe, is one of the best ways to grow your ability to concentrate and focus and train your mind. And I feel like that's very helpful for so many reasons, but especially when it comes to going into a space of receptivity, as this is why I'm mentioning meditation. And for me, I feel it was helpful that I was learning this without a guided meditation, because I later found guided meditations, and I find guided meditations are much easier because you're listening. And when you're listening, it's kind of that anchor, that continual anchor, bringing you back to your breath. As I was doing the meditation earlier, the person who's guiding you is essentially re-anchoring you to focus. Whereas if you're not using a guided meditation, it's just up to you. It's all on you and your untrained brain for you to be committed to create a new neural pathway, because that's essentially what it is. You know, your brain has neural pathways and neurons that fire in particular directions. And if it's one way, it's going to take effort consistently to carve a new neural pathway and to fire your neurons in a different direction until it's a habit and the pathway is carved in. And then it's a habit and you don't have to have as much effort. So I was very consistent, even though I really was challenged. And then when I started noticing, you know, my intuition, and sometimes I didn't listen to it straight away, and then it was there and I was like, and sometimes if it was in situations where it happened quickly and I didn't listen, and I was like, I swear I had that thought. I just thought it was thoughts. I swear I had that thought to move out of the way, and I didn't listen, and then something fell on me. Like, that's really bizarre. Like, I would have those experiences. So I was hearing it and I wasn't responding quick enough, and I wasn't listening enough, and I wasn't trusting it enough, but I was starting to hear it, but not respond or listen. So it started getting louder as I was meditating more. I started practicing yoga. I started going to one of my cousin's yoga classes, and I really loved the Shavasana, which is when you get to lay down at the end, and they call it the corpse pose, where you just lay and relax and surrender. And after moving your body and having breath and oxygen going through your body, you can surrender into bliss and nirvana. And I loved that. I felt like I wasn't stuck in my head a lot of the time. Over time, the more I was doing it, the more I was meditating, I would go into that space and my mind was clear. And because my mind was clear, if my intuition came through, I could hear it and I could connect to it, and I could go, like I get it. I gave the time, I gave the space. And so these were two of the powerful tools that I used. Something else that I began to use to connect to my intuition along my journey was using oracle cards. And this isn't just a way to connect to your intuition, but this is also a way to communicate to your unconscious mind. And this was another reason why I said, for past life regression, getting oracle cards that are designed for past life. You can get past life oracle cards. I don't have any at the moment, but I used some for many years, and they were very powerful when I was very curious and like, I want to know about all my past lives and how are they affecting me now, and is this thing that's going on that's challenging me because of my past life? So that was kind of like where I was at for a period, and I learned a lot of information, and some of it was very useful and some of it was just information about another soul journey and a journey that my soul had been on. And it was just interesting, but it didn't really necessarily serve any kind of a purpose at some of those points in my life. And it was just fascinating to me, the concept. And I was still a bit skeptical at times, but eventually it became more and more of a belief that I had, that, you know, we don't just live this soul one life experience and that's it. And there's not much after, or we go to heaven or we go to that other place. Like, that was what I was taught as a child, and it actually didn't really resonate with me. So I never disputed it when I was a child. I just kind of got this feeling of like, no. And that's kind of eventually kind of where my path had eventually led me away from that kind of viewpoint. So I feel like coming back to meditation, it's about that level of focused consciousness. Our mind, our thoughts, the observer that, you know, you get to experience when you meditate, that you're not your thoughts. Because for a very long time, we feel like, you know, what you think, yeah, that's right, you know, and that's you, like you're the one thinking. But often thoughts that come in, and ideas even, especially ideas, they come like randomly from somewhere else. And it's like, well, I never thought of this before. This isn't something that was even in my like reality. So how could this be from me? And I remember as a child, I actually started writing poetry. And this is what's come through to me before I switched off my emotions and I was very empathic and I was very intuitive. One of the tools that I used was journaling. And a part of that journaling was automatic writing. At some point, I started automatic writing and I started typing when I had a computer when I was a little bit older, started writing poetry. And I first started writing poetry as a way to overcome a broken heart from my first big love. And my heartbreak from my first big love. So I'd write him poems. And for many, many years, I never gave them to him. I just wrote them for me and I read them. And I eventually did give them to him and he didn't receive them very well. I didn't really understand because he was very much in his head, not really connected to his emotions and like, you know, oh, that's nice sort of thing. That's a poem that you wrote. And also wasn't really, you know, wishing, I guess it would have even made him comfortable. Because some of the times that I gave him these poems, he was in relationship with someone else, even though usually they weren't very long relationships. It may have been someone he just met. They weren't living together. It was like quite like a youthful relationship that's, you know, no attachment to potentially getting married or having kids or having a future, just like this person showed up now and it seems like the right thing. So, but it could have made him uncomfortable. So the response wasn't that good, but I kept writing poetry for quite a while. And then over the 5-year period that I was disconnected from my emotions, before they started emerging again and all those switches inside me flipping back on again, it was my therapy. And when I wrote poetry and I reread my poetry, I'm like, that doesn't feel like it came from me or my mind. It feels like it came from somewhere else. So I'd like begin to think about that and explore that. And then I occasionally had fun with people around when people would go. So I began to become more aware of not saying certain things when it was not coming from me and began to pick up on this is someone's thoughts. As I got older, when I was reading people's minds randomly, I'd sometimes just say things. I'd be like, you're reading my mind. And people would respond because they felt like an invasion of their privacy. Like, don't see me like, I don't want someone in my head. Like, I don't want people to hear everything I'm thinking. Like it's very like in your face and intrusive. So when I learned that I was doing that and I learned when it was happening, I stopped sharing what I was getting from people with them. And it didn't actually just come out of my mouth. Like sometimes when I wasn't aware as a child, people would think things and I would talk them because I'd think it was my thoughts until I'd said it and then they would react and I'd be like, oh, whoops, I didn't even know what I was doing. So I was connecting to these different parts and I was becoming more of aware. And I would actually say to people sometimes, I'd play with it, oh, I can read people's thoughts. And they'd be like, no, you can't. That's not possible. People can't do that. I can't do that. Surely you can't do that. It definitely does freak people out, Alison. And that's why sometimes when I've had clients in the past doing psychic readings, I often use cards because if I was actually just to read their mind or read their energy and tell them what I'm tuning into and picking up and from their past life and what their guides are saying and what their inner child wants. And like, I've had some clients who have come to me and they've wanted that and they're like very open to people's psychic abilities and their own psychic abilities. But if a lot of people that I've attracted over the years through, you know, psychic work were kind of very curious and only just, you know, had recently been exposed to the potential for psychic readings and tarot and things like that. So I'd use the cards because people can find it easier to be like, the cards told them. The cards paint the picture instead of the cards are actually just reflecting the subconscious. And they will reflect part of my subconscious as well as their subconscious, but it's about intention and the power of intention, which is why I got us all to set an intention at the beginning of this masterclass. So I practiced reading people's minds consciously with their permission. So that was something I started doing as a child, and that really kind of grew my trust, at least when I was a child. But then when I started coming back to all of this again, when I was older, I had memories. I'd forgotten when I disconnected from my emotions. I'd forgotten all the things that happened in my childhood and all the abilities that I had. And I started getting flashbacks and memories. I used to read people's minds. and I used to tune with people, and I used to be really empathic. And I'd start getting memories. I'd also start getting memories of things that I did to cope with challenging situations and overwhelming empathy. So I started being able to utilize tools, and I started journaling again, and I started writing poetry again. This time it was more conscious. It wasn't, I had a broken heart and I had all these emotions and I needed to have some therapeutic outlet. So I'd like let my soul speak through. So meditation is one of the ways to connect, and getting into the receptive space is the way to connect too, because if you're not receptive, you're not able to receive. And this is actually the feminine energy. And something that I feel can be quite challenging, or was quite challenging for me, is when I was stuck in my head, I was in a very masculine logic perspective. So sometimes the way to get into the feminine was creative, because you have a part of your brain that's very creative and abstract. So I started utilizing things like drawing and coloring. Sorry, I just need to stop for a second because the charger is not working on one of my phones. There we go. It's charging again. I didn't want the stream to die. Okay. So getting into the receptive. So I'm going to tie this into something that was said earlier. Throat chakra. I'm just reading what some of the comments are, so you can know what I'm doing. Yeah. I'll touch on that too, Alison, about speaking something someone was thinking we're about to talk about. And that's also related to empathy. Sorry, telepathy. So when you're really connected to someone, or you're really open to someone, because our energy field's out here, and if there's a person next to us or a meter away, we're touching their energy fields, and our energy fields are communicating, and our mental bodies, which is where our thoughts are, which are out here, is touching their mental bodies. So we're essentially having this communication going on between our mental bodies and our emotional bodies, even if we're, say, a meter away from each other, or 2 meters, if we've got our energy body up really, really far, which when we're very empathic, often we do, unless we know how to bring this back in. So it's not that actually we're reading their minds per se, it's that their energy body, their mental body, is connecting to ours, and ours is receiving what they're thinking because it's touching. And then if it is, it's almost like it becomes an extension of our mental body. So when it comes through what seems like we think it comes in here, it's not, it's consciousness. We're consciousness. So we're anchored in this body, but the thoughts don't come here. Like the thoughts are here and all around in our mental bodies. So they come in and we go, oh, and then we speak it. So it's almost like we've perceived their mental body as part of our mental body. Now, I've done this at distance. When I played with this as a child, there were people who were suburbs and suburbs away from me, and I would do this because I knew how to stretch and connect my mental body to their mental body, and to create a stream or a bridge almost from my mental body to their mental body to receive and transmit. When I was able, because as a child, I was able to get into this receptive energy, but then I wasn't. So the way that I reconnected to this was being able to train my mind to be in a state of focus, to get to that point of silence and stillness, so that I could hear what my soul was communicating, or my higher self, or my guides. I've now gotten to the point where I can determine, oh, there's a voice coming through. Is that my Pleiadian guides? Is that this guide? Is that my higher self? Is that my heart? And I really tune in and I inquire to figure out what is actually coming through. Sorry, this is not charging again. I'm using one of my partner's phones, and his phone often has trouble charging. Apologies. also just going to turn the fan on because it's getting quite warm in here. There we go. So I'll bring this back to, I hope that that kind of gave a little bit more context about reading people's minds, Alison. And then also we've got here Lucille. So scatterbrain. Interesting, Lucille. Something that I would desire to share very soon, I'll kind of park that, is some tools for astral journeying and like getting our consciousness out into different dimensional states and just different parts out of our body. Just some tools that I learned that can really help with what you were saying that you experienced, Lucille. Hopefully they're beneficial to you as well. So I want to come back to the connection to our intuition as well and the throat chakra. So it's interesting that I'm wearing this necklace. I've actually been wearing this necklace pretty much since it got made for me. It has a moonstone and a Larima stone. And the word Ma actually comes, the word Mary actually comes from Ma and Mare, which is actually, I think, the Latin word for water. So there's a connection to the water and the ocean, but there's also the connection to the galactic sea and the galactic space through this necklace, and also the connection to intuition and the feminine through the moonstone and the moon, because the moon is very connected to intuition. So I actually got this necklace made for me when I found these crystals when I was living in Mexico. And for me, Mexico and my journey there was very much one about deepening my feminine connection and healing motherhood wounds and becoming, it essentially prepared me to become a mother, because when I left Mexico, I came back to Australia, and not long after met the love of my life for us to have a child. And I actually got told this was going to happen by a psychic in Mexico. Very interesting story I won't go into. I have so many of those, as I'm sure all of you do as well. So the throat chakra. So this for me was actually very healing for my throat chakra. Something that the throat chakra is responsible for is expression, communication, and it's also about cleansing. And a huge part of connecting to that intuition and getting into that energetic space, the receptive space, the somewhat connection to the feminine aspect within us, because our souls are androgynous. They have equally feminine and masculine qualities. So when we're going into the aspect, the creative part of our brain, that hemisphere of the brain, and the feminine component of our soul, and its qualities, essences, and expressions, it's a sense of receptivity. It's a sense of drawing in. It's a sense of alluring. It creates this space for creating almost a vacuum for more, because there's that space. So with the throat chakra and its purpose of clearing and purification, clearing and purifying the body, but the physical body is not our only body. We have these bodies. So the emotional body that could have all these suppressed emotion blocks, the mental body that could have all of these blocks, beliefs that aren't necessarily serving our desires and aren't serving the greater part of our soul, like our monad and our oversoul, a connection to our highest self possible, and ourselves on like a higher dimensional space that's connected down to all these different bodies. So the throat chakra is responsible for all of that. And through cleansing, it helps you to be able to express and communicate. I actually, before coming on today, just to feel even more able to clearly communicate and express and feel like completely cleansed, I actually sprayed this spirit elixir to speak your truth, bringing out true essence, and it's a throat chakra spirit elixir. But there's some other things that I can share with you about that also help to connect to your intuition, because if you think about it, if we have all of this suppressed emotions like weighting down on our emotional bodies, and all of these thoughts, heavy thoughts and negative beliefs about ourselves and negative beliefs about reality, all of this heaviness that keeps us in a very low frequency because it's weighted, it's very heavy, it's very third density. It keeps us very, to some degree, it would keep us grounded, but it also helps, it also maybe anchors too much of our soul and helps us feel stuck. So if you're in that space energetically and you're not clearing and cleansing, especially your throat chakra, which is your capacity to express, move, express, communicate, like if all of this is not actually working in balance and clear and as was mentioned, healed, then you'll feel limited to move, limited to express. You'll feel choked up. You'll feel energetically drained. You'll feel weighed down. You'll feel like stuck. You won't be able to move. You won't be able to express. You'll feel this like almost like chain holding you down. So it's why it's so important to cleanse. And this is to cleanse all your body. So a practice that I'm wanting to share that's a powerful practice, and I'll add some other tools in here as well as tools to use and rituals to use to help clear out your energy field and help in the process of opening and healing the throat chakra. It's something that I have been doing as a ritual and a practice consistently for many years. And it's the reason that I actually got this necklace, which I'll share in a second. And also the connection to the crystals and how they aid as well, is going into a body of water and allowing it to cleanse our emotional body. And sometimes when we do this, if there's trapped emotions that wish to come up and our subconscious mind feels that we are ready to clear those, because often thoughts, beliefs, emotions that get suppressed, we often suppress our emotions because beliefs that we hold that we need to, it's not safe or it's not okay to express ourselves and our emotions and communicate. So we suppress them. We shove them into the recesses of our unconscious mind, which is an aspect of our energy body, as the mind and the mental body. It's just an expanded aspect of the mental body, the subconscious. It's further away, more greater out there into the connection to the akashic fields. So when we do this and we go into a body of water and we cleanse our emotional body. And part of the cleansing process has to go through all of the bodies. So that means the physical body. And if tears come up, or sadness and emotion comes up that wishes to be expressed, it's finding a safe way that doesn't harm you or anyone else, or doesn't harm anybody else's things or your own things in your expression. So really, if you're on your own and you allow yourself to cry or even coax crying, like what's going to get you to cry? Is watching a sad movie going to get you to cry? Because most of us have suppressed emotions and most of these are weighing us down and holding us back. And if we're not actively going to bring those emotions up and allowing them to bring the wisdom and the gems that they have for us, to be able to connect more truly to what's beneath. Because if we're all weighed down, there's all these wounds and stories and beliefs and emotions that are being suppressed and are just waiting to come out and being compressed onto each other, we're all like really heavy. So we need to actually clear and remove. So something that I would do is I would regularly, as best as possible, for me at the moment, it's usually on average once a week, go to natural water. But if I can't, I have a bath. If you can't, I have a shower. And I'll suggest something else you can do if you're not able to do those things, but most people here should be able to. The highest capacity is going to the water that's the most pure and natural, and just being in the water. Floating is even better. But I sometimes will just go to the beach if I'm short of time, because I live near the beach. If there's a lot going on that week, I will literally drive to the beach or the river, because there's a river nearby where I live. I will jump in up to my waist, stay in the water, consciously allowing the water to cleanse my emotional body, may duck in as well, and consciously choose that I'm allowing this to cleanse my auric field. I'm allowing what needs to come up to come up. I feel like it balances my masculine and feminine because it allows me to be more receptive. It allows me to clear any debris in my emotional body, for me to be able to allow things to flow freely. You can go in a bath, you can use the shower. So something else that's good to use in the shower, you can go under the water, and if it's just most water that most of us have, it does have a lot of stuff in it, so it's not pure. So what you can do to alchemize this is, and it's something I used to do when I wasn't able to regularly go to a river, an ocean, or have a bath because there wasn't one where I lived, or a swimming pool, which a bath is probably better, but swimming pool too. If you're going to a place where the water isn't as pure as possible, imagine and invoke that the water is of 100% pure white light and intend that it's cleansing you. And find a safe space where you are able to allow any suppressed emotions to come up. And if it's anger, I suggest some healthy things that you can do to alchemize the anger is allow yourself to feel it, be away from other people, and do something physical. Listen to, high intensity music and dance, or do a workout, or punch a boxing bag, or punch a pillow, or scream in a pillow. Something that's fast and quick is the energy of releasing anger, because that's kind of like the energy of anger. That's how it desires to be expressed. Something huge and quick, like a big bang, that's and if it doesn't, it'll come out subconsciously and we won't be able to control it because it's so suppressed, it just blows up like a volcano. And then sadness too, sadness, despair, all of these emotions. These emotions are also great ones to help with intimacy and connection. It's actually where we can connect as a human being, that we have emotions. We can connect with joy, but we connect even deeper when it comes to sorrow. This is something I've recently learned. So when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and express emotions around people who we know are safe for us to do that, and we have asked permission, because some people will feel uncomfortable and tell you to go away or try to stop you from feeling your emotions, as I've experienced. You can go off on your own, or if you've asked someone to be a safe space for you, a partner, a parent, a close friend, that they know what you need to feel safe to express your emotions if you have experienced not being able to express your emotions. This is a big part of clearing your energetic body and helping heal the throat chakra to be more able to express, to be able to act from your intuition, get the intuition guidance, and then fluidly act. So for example, if your intuition said jump, you jump and you would not get hit by something that was coming at your feet, as an example. So some other things to do with your throat chakra, since this has come up, is physical cleanses. So something I used to do quite a lot that actually helped to amplify my connection to my intuition, and helped when I was doing a lot of channeling, and helped in my capacity to be better at doing psychic work with other people and really connecting this. And also when I started being able to do trance channeling the Pleiades, and also channeling light language, that's something else that I also channel, is water fasts or juice fasts. Purifying your physical body helps you to purge your other bodies. So if you're physically purging through your body, because it's essentially what it does, it helps you to clear out and purge. It also gives your gut and your all of your digestive system, which is always working a lot, and it takes energy out of your body. It's supposed to do that. But when we're eating junk and when we're doing all these other things that take a lot more energy and effort to digest, is really weighing heavy. Like if it was a car, it would need a service. So doing a fast, I suggest to do some more research for yourself. Is this something you're going to do? Because I'm not medically recommending this, but it's something that worked really well for me. And it's something I know more and more people that are doing, even if it's just 24 hours. You're not, maybe check with your doctor if you have specific health concerns, because that's where this may become something that could be serious for some people if they have a lot of health concerns. For example, if you're diabetic. So make sure you talk to your doctor first. But one of the things that I started with that I would regularly be doing was things like a one-day water fast. And I started doing that every week or every 2 weeks. And then I started growing it to 3 days. And then I started getting to 10 days. A lot of people do more. Sometimes I did a 1 day or a 2 day juice cleanse because it's still liquids. If you're on a liquid diet for 24 hours, in that 24 hours, your digestive system gets to reset and gets to rest. And then your body has all this extra energy to heal anything else in you that needs to be healed. And that's kind of where that comes from. It also is very cleansing because you will purge all of the, you know, junk and toxins and everything out of your system. And then your physical body has less weight, less toxins, less dense energies, and then you're physically lighter. And often through the process, any suppressed emotions or healing, any beliefs that aren't serving you, they'll like all bubble up to the surface. So I suggest if you're going to do this, that you actually create space and time and a support structure, if that's what you need, and do some research to have everything you need to lovingly do this cleansing process. And that is another important thing that I feel that I have learned on my journey. Also drinking a lot of water, even if you're not cleansing, so that your body's hydrated and so that there's water, because water is receptive. Water is a receptive element, and water is connected to our emotions. The element is connected to emotions. That's a lot of the emotions that they say on a very physical, fundamental level is connected to the liquids within our being that are connected to hormones, and that they get released within different ways in the body at different times. And that can happen to do with thoughts, because thoughts are essentially, from a physically fundamental level, not from an energetic perspective, but from purely physical, there is the neurons firing in our brain down the neural pathways, and that's where the thoughts, especially the beliefs, repeated thoughts that become beliefs, are going off, and they then can have a chain reaction of, oh, release, you know, this chemical or that chemical. And that's why we're focusing on a lot of negative things, especially if they're in our energy field and our patterns of neural pathways. Then the hormones that are going to be released are ones that create feelings of sadness and pain and suffering and anger and things like this. Whereas if we're very, very positive focused and we've created beliefs and patterns and we've changed our neural pathways to focus on these things, we feel much lighter, and we have hormones that are released in our body that trigger connection to emotions of, say, happiness, joy, contentment, and things like that, and excitement. So there's some things to do with connecting. I'm just going to tune in to see what else wants to come through, and then I'm going to read some more of these comments that you've got here. Oh, that's beautiful, Alison, that you talk and pray. I listen to affirmations when I'm in the shower at the moment, but I do regularly have a bath, and I regularly go to the river, and I regularly go to the beach. So they're my main energetic cleansing points. Oh, Alison, that's so powerful, and thank you for sharing that. It's an honor to have you on this call. So I'm going to go back to the comment about going into the greater energy field. And then I'm going to move on, because I'm going to move on to how to deepen your connection to your intuition. And something else that's very important, because we have about 20 minutes left. And pretty sure that my toddler has not been put to sleep yet. He wouldn't go to sleep before the call. So he's probably very tired and often doesn't go to sleep when Daddy tries to put him to sleep for a nap. So when we're tuning into like the greater collective and going out of body and taking our consciousness out of body to go into other places, as was being mentioned in the comments, and also sleep, going out of body in sleep, and even possibly even when you're connecting to the Akashic fields and stuff like that. Some stuff that I actually thoroughly recommend that I've been doing that have really supported me, and this will lead into what I'm wanting to share, is to do with one, being grounded. Oh, that's beautiful, Lucille. Yeah, it was actually an old mentor of mine that shared that when I had an entity attached to me. And that was one of the practices that I used, envisioning that the water was 100% pure white light cleansing me. And also I would regularly do cutting cords with Archangel Michael and Archangel Raphael for healing. And I would have the energetic cleansing of the aura, and then I would get Archangel Michael to use his sword to cut the cords, and I'd do this like meditation. And I used to do a guided meditation of this, and then I just remembered it and did the meditation on my own, and would regularly cut any cords that weren't serving me and sent them back with love, and then allowed Archangel Raphael to have healing go to wherever that cord came from, and healing to come back to me where it had been attached. Come on, train to see spirits. Yes, I believe one can train to see spirits, and I will have a little bit of a comment on that. But beforehand, I want to talk about the purpose of grounding and intention and setting up your energy field before attempting to go conscious walkabout, we'll call it, consciously like coming out. So I want to have context first. So I believe that in and of itself, in its highest truth, we are all safe. We are all consciousness, you know, we're infinite. Like our soul will go on, you know, we'll experience many things, and our soul will go on, and our soul will potentially go back to source, or it will choose to incarnate and go, you know, wherever it chooses to go, different realities in different dimensions. So in and of itself, if you choose to go conscious walkabout, there's not really any true risk. The only potential risk is you having an experience that doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel good, and then your consciousness coming back to your body, and then your mind having all these beliefs and all these thoughts, and makes it mean this and makes it mean that, and you potentially having potential what you experience and feel as trauma. Or there's some energy beings around you, and they want to start playing with you and attaching to you, and in and of itself, there's no, in the future and in your soul's infinite journey, there's like, it's just an experience. So it is just an experience, but if you're being intentional and that's not an experience you desire to have, where there's that sort of challenge or that sort of experience for your soul in this particular time, something that I would recommend to do is make sure that if you're doing things like that, or if you're desiring to travel when you're in the astral realms and you're sleeping, and you're allowing your soul to go around consciously wandering while your body is resting, that you do things. So what I do is when I'm asleep, when I'm going to sleep, this is something I did many years ago, and I actually invoke this for myself, and I invoke this for my toddler, and I invoke this for my partner with permission from their higher selves. I have all these big invocations that I do pretty much daily, that I invoke, that they're in place until the next time I invoke them, in case I'm not able to do it every single day. And one of those is creating a sphere, different spheres of protection. And that's kind of just being responsible for my energy field and setting a big energetic boundary around my energy field to say, hey, if there's any energy beings wandering around that I can't see, or that I'm consciously aware or not consciously aware of, that they're not welcome. They're not welcome to attach to me. They're not welcome to affect me or influence me, unless they request permission, and I then consciously give them permission. So I set this intention. I regularly ground by eating food from the earth, by using grounding crystals, by drinking enough water, by earthing, by walking on the land, and by imagining a cord connected to Gaia. And I specifically imagine my house, myself, my toddlers, and my partner's energetic cord coming from my heart and my womb and my base chakra, connecting into the crystal core of the earth, so that I am very connected through my body, and my soul is very still connected to the earth, very balanced and grounded, because this is where I choose to be. And that also there is this protection around me, or this filter, you could call it, around me, to going out there and being able to come back here and be like, oh, that was a fun experience, with no added complications or challenges or beings influencing me or attaching to me. So I would like to tie that into what I'm about to talk to, which ties into connecting more deeply to your intuition, and how this benefits you. And I feel like this is a key to what Carla said about, can one train to see spirits? So I often won't open-eyedly see spirits. I often close my eyes to connect and tune in. I believe there are people who can just see them outright, and naturally have those gifts. And I believe people can train themselves to grow the gifts that they have. Their energetic perception, you could call it. You can train your energetic perception. You can increase your energetic perception and potential with many, many different tools. And I believe that the tools that I've been sharing today are like the prelude to that. So when I see spirits or energy or beings, I usually close my eyes, because I feel that that helps me to focus and tune in and clear everything else that's a distraction, and helps me to connect to my third eye and my ability to see into other dimensional spaces and not just the third dimension. So doing some of the things that I've said also helps to open up your third eye. One of the other things that helps in purification of the body and cleansing the energy and helping with the throat chakra is making sure you have pure water. In certain countries, tap water has all sorts of things added to it. One of them is fluoride, one of them is chlorine. These are essentially not ideal for our bodies, especially over a long duration of time. Fluoride itself is a neurochemical, which is to do with the neurons in your brain, and it also helps to calcify things. That's why they put fluoride in toothpaste. It creates apparently calcium for your teeth, but if people have too much fluoride from brushing their teeth and whatnot, they can get what's called fluorosis, which is like this white layer that grows over their teeth. So this happens in other parts of us, and our pineal gland, which is the gland connected to our third eye, which is our perception of other spiritual realities, essentially gets covered in this layer, this calcification layer. And drinking pure water and not having fluoride in your body, purifying your being and meditating and things like that, these help to break that open, this calcification. It opens up like an eye outside, but it's an eye on the inside, and it's an eye to perceive more than this physical reality. But the ways that this works is not just visual. So my abilities, my intuitive and otherwise abilities, I have clairaudience. So I get messages and I hear them like someone's next to me talking to me. And that's not always my intuition. But growing my intuition and my connection to listening to and growing my intuition, my connection to my soul, has granted me access to listening to discern. So this is the next thing that I'm going to be talking about in prelude to me talking about the strengthening of your connection to your intuition. So, quote unquote, your discernment. Your discernment is a component of your intuition. And this is something I'm so grateful that I found, because your discernment is essentially the energetic mechanics of being able to pull apart energetic information and understand it on a greater level. For example, it was discernment that helped me to realize on my own I had an entity attached to me. I had multiple entities actually in the vicinity, and I think 2 of them were attached to me. Some were wanting to attach and others actually attached. What this had experienced for me was 2 things. One was when they were attached to me, I was getting thoughts put in my head that weren't my own, because if I was on a low frequency, they could remain feeding off me energetically. And they're not in a physical body, and they don't want to go back to source, and they're afraid, and they're in this lower density energy in this limbo land essentially, and they need to survive. So it's not like they're trying to harm me, they just want to survive. So to survive, they need to get some sustainability energetically. So they'll feed off me. And if I go into a higher frequency, including having, great thoughts and great emotions, because these emotions and thoughts are all connected to my energetic fields, they won't be able to stay attached because they're at a lower frequency. So they put thoughts and other things into my head to get me to be depressed and feel bad about myself and low, so they can stay attached and continue feeding off me, so they can survive in that area, essentially. So that's one thing that happened. And 2, because of this discernment, I was able to go, oh, something's not right. That's not my thought. What's going on here? dissect, pull apart, just consciousness, my consciousness. It was this train of thought and this focused intention, and my trust in discerning, and a better word for it is being able to process and understand what is happening on an energetic level. Translate, essentially. I was able to translate the energy, the information into a way my brain could understand from this 3D perspective to know what I needed to make decisions. So I then also asked for help. I went, I think I have entities attached to me, because there was all these different things I was experiencing. Reached out to a friend that is a deeply amazing person, very psychic. So I reached out to a couple of friends, a friend who had experienced this and had removed entities before. And I also reached out to a friend to help energetically remove it. So I had what I was doing, what people had suggested I was doing, my awareness, my conscious intention, and the help of other people's energetic capacity to make it easier for these entities to be removed. And then I, moving forward, had done all these practices to prevent entities from attaching me. And for example, I wasn't aware there was an entity because I wasn't trusting my intuition to begin with. Every night I fell asleep, I was getting this image of this tortured soul. It was one of the things that I was getting. And I was just like, oh, that's just a thought. Like, it's just my mind being crazy. I'd remove the thought and I'd go to sleep. And this was happening for weeks. One of the environments that I was in was very low density. The environment that I was in, I wasn't allowed to, because of the person's belief, to use sage, to use Palo Santo, to clear the space, to have crystals in the house, to use the tools and the rituals that I usually did. I wasn't allowed to meditate in the house. I wasn't allowed to do yoga in the house. So all the things that I was usually able to do to raise my frequency and to increase my intuition were stripped away from me. And I was able to learn from that experience of what I can use and what I do have. But that was one of the biggest experiences of discernment, that I realized that was happening, and then through that process. Now, one of the other reasons that I feel that discernment is so important is because there are beings and people even, and some of these people may be under the influence of beings by the persuasion of these beings implanting thoughts in their head to get people to go astray, in a nutshell, to do things that go against their intuition and their internal guidance, and do things that go against what they came here to do, and to keep them in lower frequencies rather than raising in higher frequencies, to keep being controlled, or to keep being fed off, or to be miserable and be controlled. So there's so many different components to this, but there are people and beings that's just an intention they have and a desire that they have. No judgment here from me, but it's just not what I want to experience from other beings and other people. To influence me in a way to take me away from my soul truth, to take me away from my destiny, to take me away from what my soul chose to experience when I came to Earth. So I use discernment. When I read information, when I watch things, when I make decisions, I question and use this discernment and this intuitive translation of the energetics and inquiry and intention to determine, is this truth? And is this truth for me? Because on my journey, I consumed, we could call it, so much information. And some of that information led me down deep rabbit holes. And some of those deep rabbit holes, there wasn't any other way other than me using my discernment to know, is this real? Is this true? Do I want to believe this? And or just curious to explore something that may influence me in a way to walk a path that's not the path that I desire to walk. For example, I was very curious and deep into esoteric wisdom and went down many trains of thought and research into esoteric wisdom to do with biblical people such as Solomon and the esoteric things that he dabbled in, including invoking demons and communicating and controlling demons. So that's a path, and that's a path some people go down, but that wasn't the path for me. But my curiosity got me to a point where I had this fork in the road. Do I want to go down that path or not? And that let me know that that path even existed, because for a long time in my life, that wasn't a reality. And there are many dark paths that we can be walking down if that's what we desire or that's what our souls choose. So it's very important to use discernment. If you are opening your intuition up, there are going to be beings that want to communicate through you, that want you to channel them. Some of these beings will want you to influence people in this way or the other way. And sometimes the way that they want to influence people is not for that person's highest good. It's not for that person's well-being, we'll put it. It's not for the well-being of that person's body, energy field, expansion. And that's where the discernment piece comes in. So this is where I felt really, it's something that I could talk all day about, discernment. Let me know if you have any more questions about this, because I'm going to move on because there's not that much left. I'm going to give a few key pieces of further ways that you can deepen your connection to your intuition. I'm just going to see what messages are here. Imagine what I am doing. Oh, that's so beautiful, Alison. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that this is hitting home. Please let me know how you're experiencing this, and I'd love to get some feedback about what you've experienced through this. Doing this in this way is quite a new thing for me. I've talked in different ways in different platforms over the years, but this particular way is something that's quite new and exciting for me. So I would definitely love to hear how you've all been experiencing this and what your takeaways are too. So this last piece, how to grow your intuition. So by growing your intuition, I mean, how do you get it loud? How do you make those little soul nudges and inklings to grow and expand and become loud? Because I did, to the point that I got a soul nudge to hitchhike to Uluru. It was essentially just go to Uluru. But when I got the guidance, I was like, yeah, I've got that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. It's like I'm posting it on my to-do list. And I was like, cool. So I need a car. I want to go with a group of people. I want this to be a holiday. I want this to be all these different ways. And my mind came in and my mind was like, yo, this is how I want to experience going to Uluru. But that's not where the lessons were. That wasn't where the initiations were. That wasn't where achieving the things that I desire to achieve internally and spiritually growing me and healing was. So day comes, need to go to get there by the date that I apparently predestined I would get there, which was actually Easter, to go to Uluru. And Uluru, if nobody knows, is the gathering spot. The word Uluru means gathering spot, and it is a big red rock in Australia, in the Northern Territory. For those who aren't in Australia or aren't familiar with Uluru, it is also an earth chakra point. So at this point in my journey, I was guided to a lot of different chakra points and a lot of different earth vortexes for activating myself and getting messages and activating memories of past lives. So weeks after I got the guidance, and it was parked on the to-do list, guidance, latest day, kept coming through all day. Today, you're going. Today, you're going. None of my friends had been available to go yet, and things hadn't panned out the way I desired for it to go, with a group of friends to road trip there. So the only option that I had this day was to hitchhike. I had some money I was waiting for. The money hadn't shown up yet. I only had $5. I had food where I was, but I couldn't take all that food with me. So I took what food I could, and it took me till nighttime, and I was scared AF, like really. But at this point in my journey, I was always following my intuition, especially when it was like screaming at me, you have to go today. Like, there are so many things I don't know. And when I get intuitive guidance like that, I've got to trust it, because usually there's always wonderful things that come. There's challenges for sure, but there's wonderful things that come out of it, wonderful lessons, wonderful wisdoms, wonderful connections to people. So by the evening, I'd packed up and I had got the courage. I'd never hitchhiked before. Hitchhike, and I essentially hitchhiked from Brisbane, which is, and Uluru is like just over halfway across the country. Didn't have any place organized to stay, nothing. So I'm not going to go into that story because I have so many, and a lot of them are in a book that I will be releasing in the future. But it was really loud, and there's a couple of things that I did to increase that. And I'm going to say all the things that I previously had mentioned, doing those consistently definitely helps to increase them. Healing work definitely helps to increase them. Things like past life regression, which we mentioned, things like crystal singing bowl events, things like going to sacred sites, which is something that I mentioned, being able to heal yourself, being able to release suppressed emotions, being able to change your belief patterns so that you have neural pathways that are belief structures that are positively going to create habits that effortlessly and with flow guide you and attract to you what you desire to experience. And then the other thing is listening to your intuition, trusting your intuition. That's a big one. And we touched on that, how I trust my intuition and how I haven't trusted my intuition. What I've experienced is the single biggest way to increase the volume of your intuition communicating to you is trusting it and following its guidance. It gets louder and louder because you listen more when you're ready to trust. And when you're not ready to trust, you don't. You tune it out. It stays quiet. You distract yourself with everything around you because you don't want to see the truth, because you don't feel ready for the truth, as I'm sure we can all experience. And that's just, you know, what we can do in our journey, and that's completely okay. But if we're wanting to really have our intuition speak loudly and truly and clearly for us to hear it, and also for that to actually help us with our discernment and help us to refine our psychic abilities, our clairaudience, our clairsentience, which is clear feeling, this is a really important thing. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. Definitely aspire to use your intuition to know, your discernment to know that's your intuition, that you can't go, oh, there's an inner voice. I heard a voice. I'm just going to follow that voice. So every time I started to trust and go with my intuition, I would tune in. I'd go, is this me? I would go, energetically tune in. Is there anything I feel? Do I feel good? Like, am I in alignment? Like, am I clear? Am I grounded? What does my heart say? This is another component. And an activity that I would like to do before we finish that will lead on from this. This is one of the things that has been very powerful to me to use as a discernment tool. And there's two things that I want to share that we can do together. One is a calibration. Essentially, they're both. And one's using muscle testing and the wisdom of the body. And the other is doing a similar thing, but with your heart and your body. So if you haven't heard of this, it's really great and exciting. And that is, and they use this in kinesiology too. So if you're dehydrated, the muscle testing thing won't work well. So make sure you've had enough water. It's just not accurate. You can also use pendulums for this too, and different methods for discerning information by using these things to take you out of your head. So if you calibrate and you ask yourself a question, you know the answer. So let's say if you're a girl, you go, am I a girl? Am I a boy? Am I a girl? Am I a boy? It doesn't matter how hard I try to hold my finger. If I say, am I a boy? My finger's not strong. If I say, am I a girl? My finger's strong. It's this connection of all of the senses and everything connecting within the muscles and the wisdom of the body. So that's a way. So then you ask a question you don't know the answer to, and you do the same thing. And that's a way to discern. You know, you'd be like, is this my intuition? It's not my intuition. And you do it a few times. The other way to do with your heart is, this is especially if you're only connected to the sensations in your body and you've experienced connecting to the sensations, listening to the sensations and the feelings in your body and your emotions that are happening. So you would ask, but you would ask it a question, and feeling expansive and elevated and like happy and alive, and like people say is a fuck yes in your being, in your heart, that's a yes. So you're asking yes and no questions. If you feel retracted and you feel closed off, that's a no. And the other way to do this with your body is if you lean forward towards something, like when you ask a question, you let yourself just stand there and like kind of let yourself see where you go. If you fall backwards, it's usually a no. If you fall forward. So the recalibration is asking a question you know, because not everybody's necessarily going to be the same. So some people's, it's very unlikely, but some people's yes might be leaning backwards, like surrendering. Some people's no might be leaning forwards. So that's why you have to recalibrate. It's very unlikely that you'll feel expanded though in your heart if it's a no. So this is a way to use discernment in a very like grounded, down to earth way. If you haven't developed your ability to just tune in with information and dissect information and translate information to move to the next step to get the clarity that you're desiring. And oh, thank you, Carla. So that was the piece that I wanted to bring. But yeah, I think the single biggest thing is trust your intuition. Every time I haven't trusted my intuition, I've usually learned a lesson of, that didn't go as greatly as I wanted it to. And when I do trust my intuition, even when it's crazy, like hitchhike to Uluru, like on that journey, one of the things that I experienced, not only connecting to so many amazing people, was on that journey, the first night, I used principles of manifestation, which I teach as well. And one of them was the power of your words and intention and being open to receive. And I manifested someone hand me $100 bill. Like I had $5 and I was getting money, but I may not have got money for days. So I couldn't exactly pay for transport or pay for any more food than what I took with me. But I had everything I needed in that moment to walk and find a place to sleep. So the first person that pulled over when I started hitchhiking couldn't take me anywhere, but they essentially handed me a $100 bill. And it's like, I'm so sorry, please like go find yourself a place to stay or buy food or pay for a bus or something. It was too late to get a bus to the first stop that I was trying to get to. So yeah, like that kept happening every time. And it got louder and louder and louder the more I listened. And it got more subtle when I didn't listen, because often when I didn't listen, it was like I was being like distracted, or I was distracting myself, or I was like, no, I don't want to do that thing. Like that's too scary. And my human self was like letting limiting beliefs get in my way of actually what my soul was here for. So for some of you, I'm just going to leave it there because we've slightly over time, and I'm going to say thank you. I do have a little bit more to share, but I've been guided that for some of the places that I'm streaming, that's where I'm able to share from. So thank you so much for all of those that have been tuning in, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate getting to share this with you and getting to connect with all of you, and hopefully I will get to connect more with all of you soon. So I'll say goodbye to some of you and we'll end the feed. And I will continue. So for those of you who are tuned in either on my page or through the Divine Codes group, I would like to share with you something very special to me. Just quite briefly, I did say that there's something else that I would be sharing. This is an opportunity for those that resonate with me and resonate with learning more about what I have been sharing with you, to be able to learn. I'm just going to quickly plug this phone in now. There we go. To be able to learn more about harnessing the power of the intuition and the multifaceted ways of that in a much more supportive container. So I'm just going to check to see if there's any questions here. No, there's not. That's good. Okay, so I have a container primarily for women. That is going to be happening from the 31st of March. This is a 3-month online container. And this container for women is it's called The Power of You. And this is connecting to intuition, psychic abilities, and its life purpose accelerator. So this is an online course and training. There is the main way to access this is through a group component and a group community of all the people who are participating in this to share and work together. And it's for women who are seeking support and guidance and growth and clarity in their intuition, connection, psychic abilities, life purpose. There will be activities and experiences and resources that help to empower you through this purpose, help to align you and have you feeling confident in your internal wisdom and how to use this internal wisdom, how to connect to clarity around your life purpose and use this on a day-to-day basis, and really being able to then move forward to live in each moment and know what you came to Earth for and be able to embody what you came to Earth to live. So this is what this container is about. And I'm so happy and excited to be able to bring this to those who are seeking this. So it's for a small number of people right now. So for the group container, it is for 12 women. And there is 2 spots available to work with me on a one-on-one basis, which does have much more as well that will be added. So in the group container, there will be 13 weekly Zoom calls that go for 1.5 hours. There will also be 3 guest speaker calls with amazing people, one of them which is one of my mentors, who is an incredible person who runs spiritually activation retreats and events and does light language channeling, among many, many, many other things. And I do have as well, you will get access to a 45-minute soul purpose clarity session with me. And with the VIP component, you will also get to have calls with me one-on-one, not in the group, so that you can ask questions and go through activities with me. You also get access to me through WhatsApp. So any voice messages to answer any questions you have or any extra guidance and support, and you will receive a message back within 24 hours from me throughout that one. There will also be guided meditations to download. You will get access to an online portal with all of the videos and information for you to get access to. And you'll also get a one-on-one audio channeling from the Pleiadians to answer 5 questions that you have. So that's for the one-on-one VIP package for that extra part as well. And you get a 1-hour soul purpose clarity session instead of a 45 minutes. So that's what you get with the VIP. I won't share too much more. For those who are interested, please just comment below that you were interested. Maybe say power, comment power, and I will send you some more details and we can connect around that. For those who are watching this video, you will also be getting an $111 discount off the price of this container. Which is huge, and I'm so honored to be able to give that discount to all of you. So you just need to let me know if this, when you're getting to that place, there will be a code that you will be given to get that. I might just say power in capitals. So if you comment power, and I can send you the details, and then when you go to the checkout, if you put power in the voucher box, you will get an $111 discount. So it has been an absolute honor to present to you today and to connect with all of you. Please let me know what your feedback is, what your greatest takeaways are, comment them below, or reply to the email if you're registered and received the email. Thank you so much.